Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Case by Case. I'm Amy, and I am so happy to finally be back on here with all of my beautiful people. Welcome in, everybody. Tonight we are doing a watch party for the Sergio. This is going to be a unique, it's going to be different. And I hope that you can understand. We're going to get into all of that, but it's going to be a very unique and kind of eye-opening with how he's going to present this. I have watched the video, and what I'm here to do. Hi, Tom. How are you? Hey, Cherie. I just dropped you the link if you want to join me. It's been a minute. I need you up here, honey. So, hey, Jamie. Hey, Shaboogies. Shabugs. Yes. So, what I'm here to do, this pre-live before the watch party, is to kind of get you guys in the mindset of what you need to be thinking about as you watch what you're about to watch. So I've compiled some things, and I also gave us enough time for me to give you guys some updates on what's going on with me, the channel, and Sergio. So this is going to be a separate live from the watch party. I will end this live and then restart the next live. So they're two separate things because this is my opinion, my thoughts. And in the next live for the watch party, Sergio is going to be in the chat to answer questions. It's easy for him to do it that way, toggling back and forth for him, being on a live and then answering questions. And he knows there's going to be a lot of questions. We've spoken about this. We've planned this. So it's going to be about a 20-minute video that we're going to watch. And he will be available in the chat to answer questions. And in the meantime, we're going to get in the mindset of where you need to be going into this. It's heavy, and it's going to be somewhat of a follow the guidelines and the expertise that Sergio has been preaching for months now on how he analyzes people, how he points out different statements and different mannerisms. You're going to have to rely on that. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put you in the mindset. So before we get started on that, hey, Tom, I can't believe you're on here. It's kind of late for you, isn't it? Goose's Gammy, hi, welcome. That's a new name. Free Ricky Babe, hey. Michelle, good evening, Michelle. April Nunez, Tracy Burton, V. No Wi-Fi in them. You're fine, V. No problem. Yeah, this has been a it's been a lot, and I think that you guys you're going to get it without it having to be said. And I need all of you critical thinkers out there to understand why some things just can't be said. And that's my takeaway from this. I know that we have, well, hang on. Let me ask her, where is it? So I have been diligently going over trial transcripts, and there are some things that stick out to me for different reasons. And this weekend, no, first of all, let me back up. So everybody who's been asking about the baby, yes, the grandbaby, here, let me just pop him on the screen. My daughter, so we were supposed to be induced last Wednesday, didn't happen. The OB was called into an emergency C-section. So she didn't deliver until this weekend. And although that she was put on Pitocin for inducement, we had some complications, nothing major. But the heart rate dropped, some things happened, and they gave her a shot in her thigh to stop contractions, to basically give the baby a break, because she had been in labor for quite some time before she even went into the hospital. And once at the hospital, she was in labor for 19 hours. So there were several up and down moments. She was a trooper. She was amazing. She broke down and cried because she was worried about the baby, things happening that she couldn't control. But and I'm going to tell you what, she delivered at the Ohio State University Hospital. And for any of you who live in the vicinity of a university hospital, I recommend them because you have multiple hands on deck. We had so many, there were eyes on her all day. We were there for 19 hours, just in labor, and she couldn't move, roll over, take a deep breath without someone coming in to check on her. And that was amazing. And long story short, she had a beautiful baby boy. Here he is. His name is Kylan. We will call him Kai for short. So sweet. And from the moment that he was born and they laid him up on her chest, he knew his mommy's voice. He was doing everything he could to lift his little tiny head up, even though it was such a struggle to see her face like, oh my gosh, you are who I've been hearing for 9 months. So he's perfect. She's doing great. I'm over the moon happy for her. And the thing is with this daughter, I have 2 daughters. My oldest daughter is, she's very like, baby goes nowhere. Baby's in a bubble, baby. You can't kiss her, she's, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it kind of takes the fun out of it for a grandparent. But with my youngest daughter, she's like, Mom, my God, like, I want you here. I want you to, take him. I want you to hold him. So it's a little different with my youngest, and I'm so excited. I have in this room right now a playpen. This is like my universal room here. I have an office. I have a makeup room. I have a closet. I have 2 spare bedrooms actually that we utilize, but this room is the room. So I have suitcases for vacation. I have vacation clothes here. I have a playpen, bouncy chairs, toys. I'm all anticipating being a full-time grandma, and I would love to do YouTube full-time if I could leave my full-time job and work from home and cover trials and do more extensive case coverage. I would 1,000,000%. I love it. And when I'm away from the channel, just remember there are tons of things going on behind the scenes. We have some big announcements coming up, things that we have been working on behind the scenes. I'm hoping, I had said the beginning of September, but I'm hoping that maybe we can do it mid-August. I get back from vacation the 2nd week of August, and that's going to be go time. I have been tied up with baby, grandma stuff, work, the vault. So hopefully this weekend, we're going to get into what's coming ahead with the vault. And then we are also adding an additional series for the trial rebuttal of all the transcripts, which will be different than what you're getting. I'm hoping that it will be different than what you're getting everywhere else. Everybody, all the other creators are doing great things, reading the trial transcripts. We are going to focus on what we can disprove and rebuke about the trial transcripts. Quester will be joining me. I'm going to have a lot of special guests. I have a couple lined up already. And I have another announcement of someone very dear to everyone's heart who will be joining us full time on that series. I'm not going to say who it is yet. You all will be happily surprised when I do. And I'm hoping that we can make that announcement this weekend. We were supposed to make it last weekend, but baby came. So let me check on chat really quick before we get started. And I'm going to take myself off camera. Like this is pure me, like hair in a bun, came home from work, watered some flowers, did a little bit of yard work, and then came straight up to the office. So yeah, not cute, but I'm here. So let me turn off my camera because it's not the cutest. How do I do that? They've changed so many things. Well, maybe it won't let me take me off camera. Okay, so before I go any further, and before I address any more, thank you, Mother of Dragons. I am going to touch base on our disclaimer. This will be something that will be embedded here in the future on the channel. Why is this not letting me take me off camera? Okay, can you guys still hear me? What is going on with this whole thing? They have changed StreamYard so much, and I can't even. It says stop mic. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, that's important. There she is. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great.
Are you busy? I haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks. I'm like, where did she go?
Yeah, we've been pretty busy. Starting to lighten up a little bit though, so that's good.
Oh, there we go. I've got it fixed. Okay. So before I go any further, I'm going to read. We have a disclaimer that I'm going to read. Yeah, StreamYard has completely changed a whole bunch of stuff that makes things. It's not that it's difficult. It's just you got to figure out where to go next when you're used to it looking one way. And it's upgrades, which is great if you have time to thoroughly review the upgrades, which I don't. So I'm learning as I go. So this channel shares observations and opinions for educational purposes only. Content is for adults only. Viewer discretion is advised. Mentions of individuals are not intended to suggest involvement in any crime. There it is. You will get that in a different format going forward, closer to September. So I had made a couple of posts today on the YouTube community page. No, Legal Lacey, we are not done with the vault. We have a ways to go. We are just adding a second series in regards to the trial transcripts. And you're welcome. And these things take I cannot personally go live without a game plan. And this right here, this pre-watch party live, is one of the quickest things that I've put together. And I don't know why, but I just feel like your time is valuable. So when you're on here, I want to provide you with, pertinent information, real thought process information. So I always try to pre-plan. I just don't go live to go live and joke around. And there's some channels out there that I listen to that I'm like, oh my God, this whole live really consisted of 2 hours, but it went 4 hours because everybody was joking around. And maybe some people like it. I particularly want to give you what you want because your time is valuable, and hop off. So I wanted to, first of all, we're going to talk about Indiana. Going into tonight's watch party, we're going to talk about sexual predators. We're going to talk about, hold on, let me pull it up because I have it. So in Indiana, I think that a lot of you will be you will be surprised to know that Indiana isn't even in the top 10 for registered sex offenders. What we're looking at in Indiana is 150 registered sex offenders to 100,000 per capita in the state. I did not do the math on how many people live in Indiana to decipher how that balances out. Michael, hello. We have been fully aware of the child sexual abuse, the sex trafficking that's gone on in Indiana. And for whatever reason, I think that we all believe that Indiana has a problem. And I don't, and if you look at the national statistics, the national statistics say they do not, which is surprising. But how much of it is, I don't want to say covered up, but how much of it is distorted in how it's reported. So when you look at, your public officials who have been charged with, oh my goodness, Mother of Dragons, thank you so much. Wow, thank you. Melissa Box, welcome as a new member. If there's public officials that have been charged with being involved in nefarious things when it comes to porn, child abuse, all different types of things that we really have to look at. It really only is judged on a national scale. I can't pinpoint anything in Indiana specifically because everything is done on a national scale. So what we're going to talk about tonight, and this again is a very touchy subject. Let me pull it up here because I have it all wrote out. And this is not even, so when you're talking about a pedophile, pedophilia is a sidebar to a pedophile. So when you are diagnosing someone, they fall into categories. And obviously the title of the category is a pedophile. But every pedophile has a specific desire, a trait, or a aspiration that they're interested in. So a hebephile is somebody who has a preference for, I hate this word, is so crazy, pubescent children. So this is in the ages of 11 to 14. Children who are really at the onset of going into puberty. And this is a horrible conversation to have, but these people exist. And this is not a clinical diagnosis. This is used in forensic psychology, how they categorize certain pedophiles and what their desires are. So when we're talking Keegan Kline, for example, can any of you in chat right now tell me what his focus on young girls was? Do any of you remember? He had a thing for young girls, young teenage girls' stomachs. It does fall, hebephilia does fall into the category of mental illness, and it is completely illegal for the different types of aspirations a pedophile describes. Yes, mother of dragons, stomach, yes. Keegan Kline had a fascination with the young girls' stomachs for whatever reason. And we're talking, it's literally a fetish. Hebephilia has a fetish. They, you know, and a pedophile is a pedophile. I mean, let's just be freaking honest. They're all sick. But they all look for different things. So they all have a fetish. And for example, Keegan Kline's is a stomach. And it's creepy as shit. He's disgusting. And going into this video tonight, what is trying to be pointed out is being left up for grabs as to what you feel the focus of this analysis, what his fetish is, what is he looking at. It's up for grabs, and my opinion is it's going to be put out there in real time, real video, and I'm going to let you guys all decide for yourself what you think you're watching. Again, Sergio will be in the chat. He will not be speaking live. On purpose. So to get in the mindset of where, when we go back through all of the analysis that Sergio has done between Keegan Kline, Richard Allen, Ron Logan, and now Doug Carter, going forward, the next analysis that he will be doing will be on Garrett Kurtz. And that will be utilized between the interrogation videos and Open Secrets, the 32 short clip videos from Garrett Kurtz being in jail. What I want to do right now is I want to take all of you back to a point in time prior to Rick Allen's arrest to remind you all how Keegan Kline, who is another sexual predator, how he really truly does fit in to this case. Before we do that, let me touch base with chat really quick here. I don't know. You know what? I don't even know. Like YouTube stinks sometimes. Kurt, yeah, I'm very interested in hearing what he has to say about Kurt's, especially all of the details that I know about Kurt's. Oh, thank you, Ashley. You know what? Thank you. So I have some huge decisions to make about. I thought about going part-time at work. Simply because I am the channel requires hours of work, and I would rather sit here at the computer and work all day than actually go to my real job. I can set my own hours, but I really would like to do case coverage, like trials and things like that. So yes, please share and support the channel. Share it, subscribe. This is a whole nother full-time job that I have here. And I'm not even doing it by myself. I have a lot of help. I have a lot of people supporting in the background, who at the drop of a dime, if I need something, I'm like, hey, can you find me this? We have all of these things compiled. It's just, it does take time to go back and dig in and find it. So I would really love to work from home, especially, my youngest is my youngest. She's the baby, and I worry about her the most. She's an up-and-coming adult. She's 22. She's going to be a wonderful mom, but I want to be here for her, and I want to do this work. So here we are. Thanks, Mother of Dragons. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go back in time. Yes, Michael. Absolutely. It is a huge time-sucking job. So what I'm going to do is I want to go back in time to get everybody on the same page. And just remember the type of people. And when I say the type of people, I'm not just talking about Keegan Klein. I'm talking about anybody and everybody who would have been a part of Keegan Klein's Dropbox. And what's interesting is, as you all know, the Dropbox has completely dropped off the face of the earth. And I can tell you, when you search it, we are being told that the Dropbox was used as digital evidence, and it was legally seized, and it contributed to the case that led to the conviction and sentence of Keegan Klein. Yet, where are the search warrants? Where are the arrests from anyone who was linked to that Dropbox? So, for example, I have a Dropbox. I have team members for case by case, people that I work with behind the scenes. So I have somebody who specifically organizes the Dropbox, categorizes everything, and keeps everything updated. That person I can see on my home page in my Dropbox that this person is in there, this person is doing work, or this person has access. So Keegan if he was, if he did his due diligence, he would know that he shared a link or his entirety of the Dropbox to someone. Now, the issue is when he gives that person full access to the Dropbox, that person can then share it to anyone they want to. And that person that they shared it to should show up on the home screen as a user of the Dropbox. My guess is Keegan didn't really focus a whole lot on how the Dropbox links were being shared. So I'm not taking any guilt off the table from Keegan. What I'm saying is that Keegan may not have been aware of how expanded the access was to his Dropbox became and who was utilizing it. And I think that we all, following this case, can agree that the cover-up begins and ends with that Dropbox. Who was in it? Who is it being shared to? And were these powerful people? Hello, yes, blind hog searching for an acorn. Who the hell are you? You are brand new on here. I've never seen you before, but you just hit the fucking nail on the head. The Dropbox is like the Epstein files. Where is it? And why has no one been prosecuted? Avoiding politics, just saying. Also, why isn't the media demanding Klein's Dropbox evidence relentlessly from jump? Hallelujah, amen. And you know what they can do? They don't have to release all of the derogatory information, photographs, videos, images that were in the Dropbox. All they have to do is release the names of those who had access. That's it. Who do you think had access to that Dropbox? And you mean to tell me that there wasn't a person in that Dropbox that didn't deserve to be freaking arrested? You've got Cash App, you've got Venmo, you've got PayPal. Keegan's not doing this out of the kindness of his heart to share this fucking Dropbox in these files. He's getting paid. So who's paying him? Where are these people? Hey, Andy. Great show last night with Andrew Baldwin, by the way. I am a million % convinced this Dropbox has been obliterated. And the sad part about it is that Keegan took a plea deal. So he has no appeal available to him for another defense attorney to pick up his case and gain access to all of his discovery. I don't know how we would ever get access to it. Yeah. Bees Jones, 1,000,000%. And that is a message that Sergio wants to be circulated tonight, that the name and the names associated with whoever the state is trying to hide are in that Dropbox, which in my opinion is why they didn't want to arrest KK or Ron Logan for the murders, because their arrest would open the box. It's a massive Pandora's box, 1,000,000%. Yeah, well, Jerry Holman is a fucking liar. So let's get into this. We're going to get into, let me see, we have less than an hour. I want to get into some of this trial testimony by Detective Veto. And I do want to point out that Hang on, I lost my train of thought. That when you listen to this, and then if we are able to get to the rebuttal of it, just know that I have rebuttal about this testimony and how Nick McClellan gets up and tries to diminish what Detective Veto is saying. So I'm going to read through this quickly. I don't even know how many pages this is. It's a lot, but I'm going to go through it because I want to remind all of you how important this was in this case, and how okay, this is what I was going to say. When you think about the Wabash search, this document right here tells you what they were looking for. They were looking for a phone and a knife that was supposedly thrown off the Wabash Bridge, 6.5 years prior to. Okay, so high hopes that these things can be found after how many storms, how many floods, how many raised water, etc., etc. But just remember who flew in on a helicopter personally to go to the military airplane hangar where Keegan was taken for his special interview about all of this. Who flew in on the helicopter to be there personally? Then ask yourself, in my opinion, ask yourself, why was Keegan Kline never charged in the Delphi case? And him not being charged, could it have been a promise of silence because someone in his face didn't want his name to be revealed in that Dropbox? You shut your fucking mouth. We're not going to charge you. I came all the way over here on my helicopter to speak with you personally. Who did that? So let me get into Detective Vito's testimony. I'm going to be anyone and everybody. I'm going to go through this quickly. So the court, okay, all right, we are back on the record. And is defense ready to continue? Yes. All right, you may call your next witness. Judge, just for the roadmap purposes, we're going to transition to Keegan Kline. Okay, I'm going to call Mr. Trooper David Veto. Okay. May I? Yes, thank you. Trooper, why don't you state your name and spell it for the record, please? We're not going to go through all that. Tell the judge where you work. I'm for the Indiana State Police Lafayette Post. How long have you worked there for the state police? Approximately 10 years. Briefly in 2017 for a few months, and then I was assigned full-time April of 2019. So in 2017, basically shortly after the homicide, and then in 2019, kind of on a full-time basis. Yes, sir. Is that a fair way of describing this? Yes, sir. And in the course of your duties, did you work, let me just ask this, did you work with Nicole Robertson? I did not at that time. Okay. Did you in 2019? I did not. Okay. All right. Were you a member, so to speak, of the Unified Command and kind of a patrol unit in or after 2019? Okay, so you were kind of one of the brass that was meeting on a consistent basis, talking about the investigation. I wouldn't say brass, but I don't hold that rank, but I was part of the core team. Okay, thank you for that. And let's kind of go back to 2017. Was there a time period very early in the investigation? Here, I gotta take these Sorry, guys, I got to take these comments off. Was there a time period very early in the investigation where law enforcement or the investigative team was seeking out information regarding Liberty German's phone? Can you repeat? In 2017, yes, yes. And is it fair to say that early on that it was discovered that she was communicating with others, just people who lived in the outside world, people outside of Delphi? That is correct. And was one of those individuals identified, at least on her phone, as someone by the name of Anthony Schatz? Yes, sir. And my recollection is that the communications, well, strike that. Were there communications between Liberty German and this Anthony Schatz profile? Yes, sir. And my recollection is that those came on both Snapchat and I believe Instagram. Is that correct? Accurate? I believe it was just Snapchat. Well, we know that's not true because Anthony Schatz was also on her Instagram. Just Snapchat? Okay. That at least I was able to find records for. Okay. And so did you ultimately conduct an investigation into the identity of this Anthony Schatz profile? So in 2017, I did not. I was not part of the investigation in 2017. I started the investigation into Anthony Schatz around March of 2020. At that time, had there already been an investigation into the identity of the Anthony Schatz profile? Who was behind it? I think the last part of my page is getting cut off. Hold on. Yeah, I think the last part of my page is getting cut off. So were you working with somebody else's kind of investigative work product? That's correct. All right. And is it fair to say that the individual was an individual by the name of Keegan Klein? Yes, sir. Okay. And just, Mr. Rosie, may I approach the court? You may. Thank you. Just for the sake of kind of talking about the scope of what you were doing, I want to hand you what's been marked as Exhibit DDD. You recognize that general exhibit? Yes, I do. Okay. And this is the first page. Is this a press release from the Indiana State Police? That's correct. And the press release is dated December 6th of 2021. Yes, sir. And is it fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to get to the point here, that this press release, in summary, in asking for assistance, public assistance with regard to the fictitious profile identified as Anthony Schatz? Yes, sir. So you're really reaching out to the public at large and saying, oh, hold on. Hold on. I have to wait for this thing to go away. So you're really reaching out to the public at large saying, anything anybody knows about Anthony Schatz, please tell us. That is correct. Okay. And page 2 and 3 are those pictures. Essentially, there's 4 on page 2, 4 on page 3, photographs of this. Well, are those photographs that were associated with the Anthony Schatz profile? Yes. This individual's name is not Anthony Schatz, but associated with that profile. The profile, okay. And so were those photos included in the press release? I believe so. So you actually attached the photo of a real human, right? This is a real human, live human, correct? Yes. Vince Kowalski. Yes. Who is it? Vince Kowalski. Okay. I didn't recall that. So thank you for that. And this was offered up because you were seeking assistance regarding that profile. Correct. Move to admit DDD. So that exhibit should be available. Mr. McClelland, no objection. The court, all right, without objection, DDD admitted. So then Indiana State Police and the Unified Command created a pretty wide net as it relates to the interest in the Anthony Schott profile, right? Can you clarify that? Well, you were seeking public assistance through a public portal, right? Okay, side note, guys, they're talking 2020. Let me remind everybody that in 2017, they knew who the Anthony Schott's account belonged to. Why? Because they showed up at Keegan Klein's home in 2017. They knew who the hell he was, and they knew what the hell he was up to. But throughout this testimony, we're going to be told, well, the Delphi murder case and the child exploitation case were two separate cases, so they were handled differently at different times. That's what I derived from this report or this testimony. You guys can make up your own mind. Advertising, basically, yes. Asking for assistance for that, yes. It's a formal press release done by the Indiana State Police, correct? And the intention of that is to disseminate that information really around the world, theoretically, right? Right, to try to obtain information, correct. Well, and is it fair to say that at some point, through the work of your investigators, it was determined that there was a gentleman by the name of Keegan Klein? I shouldn't say gentleman. There was a man by the name of Keegan Klein who was associated with that profile. Yes, sir. And where did Mr. Klein live? In Peru, 67 East Canal. And so was it just generally speaking that Keegan Klein was first approached about his association with Anthony Schott's profile? I believe that was on February 25th, 2017. I'll repeat that. They knew on February 25th of 2017 who the fuck Keegan Klein was and how he had been catfishing Liberty German via Snapchat, probably Instagram, and communicating with her on the day that she was killed. Okay, so did you participate in this initial contact? I did not. Okay, are you fully familiar with the facts and circumstances that occurred, generally speaking, during that contact? I would say generally yes. In other words, there was a report now who actually reached out to, who actually made the first contact, if you recall. That would have been Tracy Kunstak with the state police, I believe. Agent Willem with the FBI. Who was the FBI agent? Agent Willem, I believe was his name. Willem. And is it accurate to say that there was confirmation that there were communications between Anthony Schott and LG leading up to February 13th of 2017? Yes, sir. And even on that day? Yes, sir. Okay, so that's undisputed. In your mind, that there was communications between the two? Yes, sir. Do you believe that Keegan Klein was the communicator, at least on the Anthony Schott's end? For the most part. Do you believe that there may have been more than one communicator? It's possible. And would the other communicator have been his father, Tony Klein? Yes. Okay. Whom he lived with? Correct. So Tony Klein also was kind of consumed into the investigation along with his son Keegan. Is that correct? That is correct. And are you generally familiar with all familiar with the circumstances associated with the investigating The investigation surrounding these two people? Yes, sir. During the course of your investigation, did you discover that Keegan Klein actually owned a firearm? Yes, I did. Did you recover a firearm from him? Essentially process that as evidence in this case? I do not believe we were able to locate the firearm. Okay. You saw some photos that had a firearm, right? That is correct. And was that firearm of interest to you? It was. Okay. Tell the judge why. It was a Smith & Wesson 40 caliber firearm. And just to kind of get to the point, is it fair to say that after that, when the crime scene was processed, there was recovered from the scene an unspent round near the bodies of the girls? Get out. Sorry, I had to kick my Yorkie out. That is correct. Okay, and if I recall, I seem to recall this, that it was a 40 caliber round, right? Yes, sir. And so one of the reasons why you were interested in this firearm is because it was the same caliber as the round that was found at the crime scene. That is correct. But you were not able to recover the gun, right? No, sir. Is it accurate that there are actually pictures of him with the gun? I don't recall pictures with him, but there were pictures with his friend, Dirk Hayes, I believe, with the firearm. Okay. And then ultimately, when Keegan Klein was interviewed in this case, is it accurate to say that law enforcement learned that he had various electronic devices that he was communicating with to people outside of his household? That is correct. Basically, the public, right? Yes, sir. And I'm kind of going down the list. He had at least one, if not two, iPhones. Is that right? I believe so. A Samsung phone. Do you generally recall that? Yes, sir. A tablet, or maybe even then a tablet. I believe it was one tablet. I think I even saw where he had an iPod, which kind of took me back in time. But yes, sir. Okay, I think so. And do you agree that all of those items, or at least the majority of them that was discovered, had contact that was associated with child pornography? Yes, sir. And is it fair to say that during this investigation, in this case, that the idea that sex may have been a motive was pretty obvious amongst Unified Command? As in that the idea that there may have been some sexual motive to this case was common knowledge amongst the Unified Command? Yes, sir. Okay, so there was a real interest in getting in the fact that Keegan Klein had all of this child pornography essentially in his possession, right? A separate case was developed to investigate just that, yes. Okay, but that consistency between with what you believed may have happened in this case at the crime scene, no, strike that. There was a consistency between what you believed might have happened in this case at the crime scene with some of the materials you were finding as well. I guess I don't understand the question. That's probably because it was a poor question. Let me withdraw that. Do you agree that there was a belief that sex may have been a motive in the Delphi case? Yes, sir. And do you agree that obviously that would have involved two minors? Yes, sir. And do you agree that Mr. Klein had a lot of material on his phone and tablets and electronic devices that related to sex with minors? Yes, sir. And is it accurate to say that a lot of the Keegan Klein Anthony Schatz profile material was current? In other words, He was transmitting this material close in time to the crime in this case. There, it spanned over years, leading all the way up to that point. Is that fair? Yes, sir. And so at some point, your investigation team decided that they were going to administer a polygraph to him. Is that right? To Keegan Klein? Yes. That was before I was involved. But you were aware that that happened? Yes. Okay. And so there were resources being exhausted on him in terms of his potential involvement, right? Yes, sir. And is it fair to say that he was denying early on in the investigation any connection whatsoever with Liberty German? Yes, sir. And he was denying responsibility for any of this child pornography that existed? Yes, sir. He was lying to you, basically, your investigative team, back in 2017. Hold on. When he was initially approached. Yes, sir. My recollection in reading the reports is he was pretty much lying about everything that you asked him about or your team asked him about. At first, yes. And I recall seeing in one of your reports that he actually, I think it was around the time that he was polygraphed, went back and wiped out some of the information on one of his phones. Yes, sir. Do you remember that? I do. And all right, I think he just basically deleted all the apps that he was communicating with. Is that accurate? There were specific ones, Snapchat and some other ones. And did you find that to be evidence of information that suggested that he may have some culpability in this case at that time? It's unknown because the material was lost. So is that something an investigator that was of interest to you? Yes. And that it could have been connected with his involvement in this case? Sure. Now, going back to there was an interview of Mr. Klein, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, on February 25th of 2017. Does that sound general? Yes, sir. Accurate? Yes, sir. Thank you. And do you recall that during that interview, I think early on, well, strike that. Do you acknowledge that that occurred at his dad's home and his home in Peru? Yes. Yes, it occurred in one of our vehicles that we have that was parked outside. Okay. And do you recall that that interview initially, he denied his responsibility, right? Yes, sir. But then at some point during the interview, he started to change his story, basically. That's correct. And I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but like he actually was kind of beating himself up, saying that he was a piece of crap and things like that, right? I believe so. And then eventually he acknowledged that he had been lying to the police about his connection with the Anthony Schatz account. Yes, sir. And ultimately, it was accurate to say that you were able to confirm undeniably that he was Anthony Schatz, basically, that he was the person who was operating the profile online. Yes, sir. And communicating with Liberty German in that respect. Yes, sir. All of it on the day that the girls came up missing. Don't know if he was the one communicating that day, but he did admit to creating and using the account. Yes. But those communications were coming from a device that he had possession of or that he had control of. Of the account? Yes. So let me pause there. Let's fast forward down the road. I believe it's 2021, where Trooper Veto is interviewing Keegan Klein, which we had the transcripts from. Now remember, this testimony here is well after that fact. And Detective Veto is downplaying what he was aware of when he interviewed Keegan Kline in person, where he knew damn well that Keegan was communicating with Liberty German on the morning of February 13th, and he suspected that more than one person was utilizing that account that morning. And there's going to be some other nefarious lies in this testimony by Detective Veto that if, let me just throw that out there, that if the defense team would have been willing to work with people involved as YouTubers or creators or people who know this case inside and out, they would have been told the truth. They would have been told that this phone was being passed around, this account was being passed around, law enforcement knew it was being passed around, and maybe the prosecution even knew it was being passed around. And I'm going to remind every single one of you that Miss Diener, working for the prosecution, has made it public, whether it was intentional or not, that she prepped not only prosecution witnesses, but defense witnesses. So they knew what the storyline was going to be, they knew what to say, and they knew what not to say. And this right here is one of those things. Like, we've never seen a video interview of Keegan in the back of a police car. We know that there was huge questions. The only reason Tony Kline was brought up in any of this was because law enforcement believed that multiple people under the same roof, connected to the same Wi-Fi, was using that account. They had different speech patterns. They had different verbiage. That was why Tony Kline was brought into the fray on this. It wasn't because Keegan threw him under the bus from the jump street. It was because law enforcement suspected it. And Detective Veto is completely downplaying that right now. So let me continue. So he wants to, yeah. Did he have control of the account? Yes. So we're going to pretend that it was just because he had control of the account. And did you learn also from Mr. Kline that in the week or so after the girls came up missing, that he and his father went to Las Vegas? They did go to Vegas, yes. And did you learn that his father had at some point offered him money to stay out there? The Vegas trip was pre-planned, and I believe the money to stay out there was later. So we keep hearing about this Vegas trip being pre-planned. Great. Perfect. That doesn't mean a month before their pre-planned trip, they could not have said, hey, we're coming out there on this date, and I think we're going to be able to bring you a snuff film. Do you really think it would be cheaper for Keegan Kline to live in Vegas on his dad's dime versus living at home, sitting his fat ass in front of a computer all day? Or was it because his dad knew Keegan Kline had loose lips and needed to keep his mouth shut? Stay the fuck away, stay out there. And simply because this Vegas trip was pre-planned doesn't mean anything to me. It means pieces fell into place. Okay, so there was an offer of some kind. Yes, after they came back. There was some question about why and whether the significance of it. Right. Correct. Do you acknowledge that he was not able to offer you up an alibi for February 13th that you could corroborate or corroborate? That is correct. Now, pay attention here. So either Detective Veto in his face-to-face interview that we have the transcripts of Keegan Kline was a complete fucking lie, or he was banking on Rick Allen's defense team not doing their homework. Listen to this. Do you acknowledge that he was not able to offer you up an alibi for February 13th that you could corroborate? That is correct. Okay. What I recall is that he may have said he was with his girlfriend or something, right? He gave multiple different stories to investigators then, and then throughout my interview as well. Could you say that again for me? To the investigators in 2017, he gave information on what he was doing, and then it did change a little bit over time. So he gave inconsistent stories about his alibi over the course of the investigation? Correct. But you were never able to clear his alibi, any of those versions, right? We were able to disprove a lot of pretty much everything that he had said. Okay, so he gave you a story, said, hey, I was there on February 13th, and then you later proved that that wasn't true. That is correct. So the further you went, the harder it got to even identify where he was on February 13th. Ultimately, we were able to, through his phone data, show that he was at his residence using his phone that day. I want to know, let me just pop back over here to fucking chat. I want to know how many of you have heard that Keegan Kline on February 13th was proven to be at his home, using his phone. Because that is not what he's talking about, an interview in 2017. Now, mind you, this is right before trial. So there was a whole lot that transpired in between 2017. Okay, Legal Lacey, have you never heard Detective Veto tell Keegan Kline in his interview that you said, Keegan Kline said that he was at his grandparents' house with his father? And that was a lie. And Detective Veto pointed out to him phone data in that interview that he was down the street on Paw Paw Pike at his cousin's house, where his phone was being used to do nothing but look at porn. Yes, Bees Jones, he was at Travis Trexler's house. And not long after all of that information came out, guess who was arrested on some podunk warrant? Travis Trexler, Keegan Kline's cousin. I've only heard this story, that he was supposedly at his grandparents' house, and they proved that to be a lie, that he was down the road off of Paw Paw Pike, and his phone was searching pornography. Now, go back to Keegan Kline's, not Keegan Kline's, I'm sorry, Reese Davis's statement of what Keegan said, and that was he left his phone at home. Well, we do know that he has multiple phones. And who knows what he did that day? But I do not believe that he was home all day. And then ultimately, I believe that he stated that that evening, him and his dad watched a WWE wrestling match that was on pay-per-view. It's not that we should believe a word that KK says. What we can't, there's a difference between what he says, and there's a difference between factual evidence that he was communicating with Liberty German. He was getting nude photographs from Liberty German. He had arranged to meet her that day. He even told one of her friends who messaged him about Libby being missing, and he said, I was supposed to meet her, but she never showed up. Those things are undeniable. Okay, so I'm going to get back to the transcripts. So we have like 10 minutes. Ultimately, we were able to, through his phone data, show that he was at his residence using his phone that day. Okay, so this is being said in 2024, but in 2021, Detective Veto was saying something completely different. And it appeared through the transcripts that Keegan Kline was being shown actual phone data. Like, look here. Do you see this? This is where you were. These were the messages that were sent. Like, listen to the transcripts. Keegan is being shown something. So why is Detective Veto getting away with being flagrant on where the fucking phone was? It was just, phone was at the residence, right? Correct. Whether or not he was using it, you don't know, right? There was some data, I was told, that it was being used at that time. Really? That you were told? You didn't have access, lead investigator, on this portion of the case? You didn't know what the phone data was? Give me a break. Well, but his father also had access to it, right? Potentially. And he lived with his father? Correct. And you had concern about his father's involvement in this case as well? Correct. Well, why? Why? Now, do you recall Mr. Kline admitting to law enforcement that he actually did exchange some of these, or did exchange these photos? I think they were admitted on DDD here to page 2 of 3 with Liberty German. I believe so, yes. And he was essentially offering these up as basically an alter ego, or some kind of, I guess, an alter ego, right? Correct. Do you recall him telling law enforcement that he'd actually deleted information regarding his communication with her? He did admit to, I believe, blocking her and deleting the application he was using to communicate with her. Okay, trying to destroy proof that he was communicating with her? I'm sorry? Destroying proof that he was communicating with her. Communicating with her and probably the other underage individuals. He did actually say that he had been communicating with some of her friends too in the week or so leading up to this, right? That is correct. And I recall in one of the video conversations, I have a note here. It was at 2:13 that there was a suggestion from one of the law enforcement officers that he had some of the same physical characteristics as the picture of what we referred to as Bridge Guy in this case. You remember that? You'd have to clarify that. Okay, you don't recall that? Him saying that? Strike that. What I recall from watching the video is that there, hold on, hold on, my pop-up at the bottom keeps blocking my screen. You don't recall that, him saying that, strike that. What I recall from watching the video is that there was some suggestion by the interviewer that Mr. Kline had some of the same physical characteristics as the person in the Bridge video. Do you recall that? Was that from the February 25th interview? I think. I'm not going to say because I don't know. I see it here marked as 2:13 on the video. Okay, I don't recall. Okay, well, if you don't know. You saw Mr. Klein, right? Multiple times over the years. And just from a physical standpoint, are there similar characteristics between him and the person that's in the bridge video? I would say he was bigger. When you saw him? Throughout the years, yeah. And when did you actually have physical contact with him? That would have been August of 2020. Okay, so 3 years after the video was taken, right? That is correct. Do you remember him failing the polygraph exam? I'm sorry. Mr. McClellan to the rescue. Judge, objection. You fucking dumbass, objection. It's not admissible at the trial level. It can't be considered by the court or shouldn't be considered by the court. So I'm going to object to that question. Mr. Rosie with the save. Judge, this isn't, we're not in trial. This is a pre-trial hearing where the rules of evidence are relaxed. And I think the evidence I think the relevance of this is that because he showed some deceit, they continued to investigate him as it related to the crime, as it shows that he maintained. He became, I'm sorry, that he continued to be a person of interest. That's why I'm asking to introduce it, not because I'm asking the court. I understand what you're saying, but the nexus has to be provided by admissible evidence in a trial, and that's what the objection is. And since a polygraph's not admissible in the trial, that's why I would sustain the objection. Mr. Rosie, I appreciate that. May I comment on that? The court. Sure. Judge, my view is that may not be accurate because, again, in a hearing like this, the court's allowed to accept hearsay evidence that may not be admissible at trial. And so, by analogy, I think the court could accept evidence about his participation in the polygraph. The court, okay, thank you. Move on. Thank you. My note suggests, I do recall this generally, that there was an interview on August 21st of 2020. Did you do that interview? With Tony Klein. With Tony Klein? Yes, that's correct. Okay. And that was at was the Carroll County Sheriff's Department? Peru State Police. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And I recall that at that time, you had some tips that were working with that suggestion that Tony Klein may have been involved in some murders. Do you recall that? I do not recall that specifically. All right. Were you aware that he had a history of some violence? That is correct. Okay. And I do recall that some of that involved like domestic related violence. Is that right? Yes, sir. And did you have conversations with him about him assaulting his wife at one point? I'm not sure if I did during that interview or not. Do you recall having a conversation with Tony Klein about him assaulting one of his kids who was about 4 or 5 years old at the time? I believe so. And that he actually shoved a child's head in a toilet. Do you recall that? Yes, sir. And do you recall having a conversation with Tony Klein about him putting a shotgun to Keegan's mother's head at one point? I don't know if I spoke to Tony about that, but I do remember Keegan making statements about that. And do you recall Keegan making statements about the fact that his dad kind of had a bad leg at one point and suggested he looked a little like the video of the bridge guy having a bad leg? Thank you, Doug Carter, for pointing that out. Notice his gait. I believe Keegan did make a statement about his father's leg. He even said that his dad wore clothing similar to that. So let's pop back over to Reese Davis's statement where he talks about whoever was corralling the girls and trying to get shit thrown in the creek twisted their ankle. I don't know. We just have a lot of coincidences in this case. It's miraculous. Now, fast forwarding, is it accurate to say that there was a time when, well, Keegan Kline was ultimately arrested for crimes in Miami County? Is that right? That is correct. Mr. Rossi, may I approach the court? You may. Handing you what's been marked as defendants E. If you would just take a look at that. Generally familiar with that document? Yes, sir. Okay. Is that an abstract of judgment? That's what it says at the top, right? Yes, sir. Basically a sentencing order that reflects Mr. Kline's convictions from his Miami County case. Correct. And it is fair to say, just to summarize, and the judge can discern, she can sort through those. Basically, is it accurate that when the state police investigated Keegan Kline in this case, the Delphi case, that resulted in him being charged with numerous offenses in Miami County related to child sex acts? It was a separate case that was spurred from this investigation. Yes. Okay. It was prompted by this investigation. Correct. Basically, you unearthed information regarding child pornography and those types of things that was then taken by another investigative team. Law enforcement did in 2017. Yes. So I am going to stop there, and I have about 4 more pages to read, but I am going to cut this off. I'm going to cut this off, and we're going to come back. I hope all of you are picking up what I'm putting down as far as what Sergio in his analysis has shown you already. I mean, you either agree or you disagree, but it's very telling. And when you watch the way that he dissects each analysis, it's very hard to walk away going, okay, he's full of shit. No, I truly believe that Sergio has a great technique. He has a great foundation. He's been trained for this. And this coming video that we're going to watch next is, you have to remember who we're talking about, who is being analyzed in this video, and the repercussions for accusations, etc. These are opinions. I want to reiterate that. These are opinions. And as much as I want to say this is for entertainment purposes only, this is real life shit that's transpiring in the world right now. This is our law enforcement throughout the country, and they need to be held accountable. You either walk the walk and talk the talk, or you get called out. You don't get a golden spoon in your mouth and a free pass to do whatever the hell you want because you faked the funk, took an oath, and plastered a badge on your chest. Somewhat, Tom, we are going to watch together. So I am going, I'm going to cut this live off, and we're going to come back. It's 7 o'clock. I hope that you will all join me because Sergio will be in the chat as this airs. We might be a minute or two delayed in the watch party as far as the premiere going on, but I hope that you'll all be here. So Sergio can answer your questions, and I can stop and pause, and we can, commentate along the way. It's only about a 20-minute video. It's going to be completely different than what we've had before, and I'm excited. So love you guys. See you in about 1 minute.